Now there's still a long way to go for this visor and bassinet before they look like they ought to. At the moment it all looks a bit rough and ready, shall we say. But what I wanted to do is do a video taking a look at a few of the extra considerations that I think you need to give when you're putting a hinge onto the side of a visor like this. The actual making of the hinge is the same as the video that I'll put in the link below. But there's a couple of extra things just to think about for this, and when I like to make it to attach to the helm in the build process. I've seen people do it in different ways. I'm sure they get plenty of mileage out of that. This is just where I like to go. So we'll take a look at a few of those considerations and how we get this made. So prior to making the video, what I've done is I've tried to make sure that the 2 points I want to use, it's this thinner line here and the one on the other side, are more or less equidistant from the middle there. A couple of mil here and there isn't going to affect things too much. It just means the visor, when it goes up, may not be dead central to the crease here. It might just be off a bit, but you see that all through the original helmet, so I shouldn't worry too much or get bent out of shape over it. So what I've marked is where I would like the edge of my hinge to be. That's this part here. And for the way I make my hinges, and with the size of the nail I'll be using as the pin, I come back about 8 to 10 mil from that and make a rough mark, and that's where I'm going to start to bend it in just a minute to start the whole hinge making process. I want to make sure that there's enough material back here to wrap round to make it easy for me to do that, but not too much. This is a bit too much. So what I'll do in a minute is cut it somewhere along that mark. Don't have to be too accurate, just make sure there's enough material. So first things first, then I'm going to cut off this bit of excess just to make it easier for me to turn this over. So the first thing then is I'm going to just start this turn over, and that's going to be where the pin will go through. Remember, a lot of this excess will be cut off, as you can see in this one. We're going to cut that back, that bit of excess that's there, a bit later on. But at the moment it makes it easier to have a bit to make this turn. I've just got a T-stake here that's easy because it means I can get the visor around it, but equally you can use the end of an anvil, whatever works. I just find this a bit simpler. Now there's the line I want it to be on, so what I've done is I've taken it about 8 to 10 mil that way, and I'm just going to start that turn. I don't want to crease in here because this is going to be the back of the curve, so do it lazily. The way of doing that is keep it on the end here, but if you're working there it can often lift this bit of material up, so just stay in charge of it and keep it vaguely where it needs to be. Now like I said, much of this process from here on in is almost the same. Pretty much exactly the same, to be honest, as making the normal hinge. There's just a few bits to consider about how you get this lump on the side that you're after and so on. But for the minute, offer it up, keep it nice and firm down onto the anvil there so you're not curling the whole thing over. Keep it down there and then just start to bring that over. If it does start to bring the whole piece towards us, by that I mean curvature of the visor comes around, it's not that big a deal, we can get back to that later. We just want to get this over. What you'll find is you'll be working it and then suddenly it will just go. Now if this was to be on a high carbon piece, you need a bit of heat in here. This is a bit of mild, so we're okay. We're just going to get that across and start to get it down so it will pinch our pin that we're going to use in just a second. So I'll offer the pin up to that and we'll take a look at the next stage. So the pin I'm using, I tend to use this as round nail in this case. Oop. It's a round nail in this case. A bit of wire will do, anything like that you've got. What you're looking to do is offer it up into there and just knock it down so that it starts to pinch. And all you do is just offer it up past the edge of the anvil, about the size of the nail plus a bit. So obviously it's a circumference, so it goes round a bit more. So we'll get that in there and just start to tamp it down. Take it nice and steady, no need to rush. There we go, so we're starting to get it over. Now you'll notice, more eagle-eyed amongst you, that I'm a bit off on my line. Look, there's my line, it's almost in the middle, it will be in the middle of the nail, and there it is on the edge. It's no great shape. So I'll put up a couple of pictures of originals, and you can see they're all over the show, and it'll be fine. By the time it's on there and moving around, that won't affect things at all. So we don't need to panic. Obviously, if it was a long way off, just pull it back open, get it back going. But you can see our nail now is pretty much rigid in there. It's not quite down in that corner, so what I'm going to do is just give it a couple of taps. There we go, we've got it down. Offer it back up to the surface here. Get it working for us. Here we go. Now what I'm doing, by keeping that in hard against the corner here of the anvil, and that down there, I'm starting to get the hinge to come back for us, and that's what we want. We want that hinge on this side. Obviously if it goes the other way it won't work. So keep an eye on it. It still needs a bit more. So offer it up and just tap it down. As you do this, you'll notice it starts to lift this tab up. Just tap it back down. Give it a knock. And once it's starting to really come over, just take it a few bits here, just to keep its shape. When you knock these back, don't start it back there, because all you do is pull it back towards you. Keep it towards the back half along this edge. And there we go, more or less done. So we go, we folded that back across. The rest of the hinge making process is exactly as I've detailed it in another video. It's all pretty straightforward, with the exception of the removal of this tab. This is inside the visor and will be rubbing against the bassinet and spoiling the fit that we've roughed out. So we need to take this section off. And you just need to do that carefully, really. So I'm going to show you how I go about doing that. With my grinder. You can use a chisel, but I tend to just use a 1mm slip disc, and what you need to do to get that out the way, and then you're all set for your bassinet hinge.